In the heart of Las Vegas, where the neon never sleeps and every smile hides a lie, Cole Harlan sat alone in the VIP lounge of the Royale Casino, the most glittering jewel on the Strip. The air was thick with cigarette smoke, expensive perfume, and the low murmur of desperation dressed up as excitement. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over blackjack tables where fortunes vanished in seconds. But Cole wasn't here to gamble. He never gambled. He watched. Like a wolf moving through tall grass, his sharp eyes scanned the crowd, reading faces, hands, the way shoulders tensed, the way smiles never quite reached the eyes. Black suit-tailored sharp watch, simple but obscenely expensive. He looked like just another high roller. No one knew he owned half the shadows in this city. Then, he saw her. At the high-stakes blackjack table under the brightest lights sat a young woman, 20 years old at most. Ava Monroe. She wore a sleek black evening dress that clung to her slender frame, beautiful enough to turn heads. But something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Her posture was too rigid. Her fingers trembled as she placed her chips. Her eyes, red-rimmed, exhausted, stared at the green, felt like it was a grave. Around her neck, a faint bruise peeked from beneath a delicate silk scarf, poorly hidden, as if someone had tried to paint over darkness with silk. Beside her sat Derek Kane. 43, polished, wealthy, the kind of man who smiled easily while tightening the noose. His hand rested on the small of her back, not gently but possessively. Every time she moved, even slightly, his fingers pressed harder. When the dealer spoke to her, Derek answered for her. When she reached for her water, he slid the glass closer before she could touch it. Ava didn't flinch. She had clearly learned not to. Cole's jaw tightened. He had seen this before. 7 years ago in a rainy Brooklyn alley, he had noticed the same signs on a girl named Sophie Reed. The bruises she blamed on clumsiness. The way her boyfriend watched her like property. Cole had asked once. She had smiled and said everything was fine. He had believed her, because believing was easier than getting involved. 3 weeks later, Sophie was dead, beaten to death in her own apartment while neighbors pretended they heard nothing. That guilt still lived inside Cole like a blade between his ribs. He had sworn that night he would never look away again. Now here in Las Vegas, the same story was unfolding under blinding neon. Derek leaned in and whispered something in Ava's ear. She nodded quickly, too quickly, the mechanical obedience of someone who knew the price of hesitation. Her left hand stayed hidden under the table fingers, twisting nervously. Then Derek stood up. "Stay right here, sweetheart. I need to make a call." He walked away toward the private lounge phone already to his ear, confident that his little bird wouldn't fly. For the first time that night, Ava was alone. Cole watched. And then it happened. Ava slowly lifted her right hand just above the table, palm facing out, 4 fingers pressed tightly together, thumb tucked in, the silent distress signal. She held it for less than 2 seconds before lowering her hand back to her lap, eyes never leaving the table. No one else noticed. The dealer was shuffling cards. The couple beside her was laughing too loudly. The neon lights kept flashing. But Cole saw it. His blood turned cold. In that single desperate gesture, Ava Monroe had just screamed for help without making a sound. Cole's fingers tightened around his glass. Memories of Sophie flooded back her broken smile, her final funeral on a gray morning, the way he had stood at the back because he couldn't face her family. The regret that had never left him. He could walk away right now. This wasn't his table. This wasn't his fight. Derek Kane looked like any other rich tourist with a pretty young girlfriend. No one would blame him for minding his own business. But Cole Harlan had made a promise to himself 7 years ago in front of a cheap coffin. Never again. He set his glass down slowly, heart pounding with a dangerous mix of rage and something deeper, the heavy weight of responsibility he could no longer ignore. In the city that never sleeps, where everything is an illusion, one girl was being sold piece by piece under the brightest lights. And tonight, one monster was about to lose his prey. This story is about what happens when one man finally chooses to see what everyone else ignores, and how a single moment of courage can pull someone back from the edge of darkness. Cole leaned back in his chair, eyes never leaving Ava. He wouldn't approach her yet. Not here. Not with Derek so close. Instead, he would watch. He would wait. He would learn every move Derek Kane made. Because when the time came, he would step out of the shadows, and this time he refused to be too late. The neon lights outside the Royale Casino still burned bright, but inside Cole Harlan's private suite on the 42nd floor, the glow felt colder. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, staring down at the endless river of headlights on the strip. His phone lay on the glass table beside him. 2 missed calls. One from Jax Riley, one from Marcus Vale. Cole finally picked it up. Within minutes, the truth began to bleed through the screen like poison. Derek Kane was not just some rich businessman on vacation. He was a predator who hunted in plain sight. For the past 3 months, he had wrapped invisible chains around Ava Monroe, using fake gambling debts, promises of a better life, and slow, calculated isolation. He had taken her ID, her phone, every document that proved she existed. And tomorrow morning, he planned to take her out of Las Vegas entirely. A private car, a secluded luxury resort deep in the desert. Somewhere no one would hear her if she screamed. Cole's grip tightened on the phone until his knuckles turned white. He watched the security feed Marcus had quietly fed into his system. The luxury suite Derek had booked for them appeared on screen. Ava sat on the edge of the massive bed, perfectly still, like a doll someone had posed. Derek moved around the room with calm confidence, pouring himself a drink, checking his watch, smiling as if everything was perfectly normal. Then Derek walked behind Ava. His hand slid around her throat from behind. Not hard enough to bruise further. Just firm enough to remind her who owned the air she breathed. He leaned down and whispered something against her ear. Ava didn't pull away. She simply closed her eyes for a second, her lips pressed into a thin line, forcing her face to stay calm, even as a hotel staff member knocked on the door to deliver fresh towel. Cole turned away from the screen. His chest felt tight. Sophie Reed's face flashed in his mind again, young hopeful lying to him with that same fragile smile. "I'm fine, Cole." Really. He had believed her. He had walked away, and she had died screaming in a place no one cared to look. The memory cut deeper than any knife. He couldn't breathe easy. Not tonight. Cole dialed a number he rarely used. It rang only twice before a calm professional voice answered. Dr. Lena Voss. "It's Cole," he said quietly. "I need a safe placement. Young woman, early 20s, severe control and trauma. She has nothing left, no papers, no phone, no one looking for her. I'll need medical care. And someone who understands how deep these scars go." Dr. Voss didn't ask unnecessary questions. She had worked with Cole long enough to know when he spoke, like this someone's life was hanging by a thread. "I'll prepare a room tonight," she replied. "Private wing. Full support team. She can stay as long as she needs." Cole thanked her and hung up. His hand lingered on the phone. He knew what he had to do next would be dangerous. One wrong move, and Derek would sense it. Men like him always did. Hours later, when the desert night had grown quiet, Marcus Vale's subtle touch worked. A mild sedative slipped into Derek's nightly whiskey, nothing dramatic, just enough to pull him into a heavy sleep. Cole moved like smoke through the service corridors. Jax Riley waited at the staff elevator, giving him a single nod. The door to the suite clicked open with a master key. Inside, the only light came from a single lamp beside the bed. Derek lay unconscious, breathing deep and even. Ava sat curled up on the sofa near the window, still wearing the black evening dress. When she heard the soft sound of footsteps, her head snapped up in terror. Cole raised one hand, slowly showing her it was empty. "It's me," he whispered, voice low and steady. "From the blackjack table. I saw your signal." Ava's eyes widened. For a moment she couldn't speak. Then her shoulders began to shake. Cole knelt a few feet away from her, keeping distance, giving her space to breathe. "I know what he's doing to you," he continued softly. "I know he plans to take you away tomorrow. I'm not going to let that happen." Tears slipped down Ava's cheeks. She wiped them away quickly, glancing at Derek's sleeping form with raw fear. He always knows, she breathed, voice barely audible. "If he finds out I talk to anyone." "He won't find out tonight," Cole said. His tone was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "Tomorrow morning, everything changes. But until then, you have to keep playing the part." "Can you do that for a few more hours?" Ava stared at him, torn between desperate hope and years of trained terror. A single sob escaped before she could stop it. She pressed a hand over her mouth. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered. "You don't even know me." Cole was quiet for a long second. The image of Sophie's coffin flashed behind his eyes again. "Because someone should have helped a girl I knew. A long time ago," he said finally. "And I didn't. I won't make that mistake twice." He stood up slowly. "Stay strong, Ava. Just a little longer. When it's time, I'll come for you. I promise." Before he left, he placed a small burner phone on the side table hidden behind a vase. "Only my number's in it. Use it only if you have to." Then Cole slipped back into the shadows of the hallway, heart pounding with a dangerous mix of resolve and dread. Back in his own suite, he stood once more at the window, looking out over the glittering city that never told the truth. In that golden cage of a room, Ava Monroe was dying slowly, day by day. And Cole Harlan knew if he failed this time, Las Vegas would swallow another life whole. And no one would even notice the scream. The night in Las Vegas never truly slept. Even at 3 in the morning, the neon signs outside the Royale Casino still pulsed like a fevered heartbeat, red, gold, electric blue painting the sky in colors that lied about everything. But inside the penthouse suite on the top floor, the air felt different. Heavy, sharp, like a blade being slowly sharpened in the dark. Cole Harlan stood alone in the private elevator, his black vest perfectly tailored, the top button of his white shirt undone. In his hand, the phone screen glowed with a single message from Marcus Vale. "Derek Kane has left the suite. Camera system on floor 42 will be down for exactly 18 minutes. Clock is running." The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Cole stepped out. He didn't rush. Each step was measured, deliberate, the way a man walks when he knows one mistake could cost a life. He carried no gun, no knife. The only weapon he needed tonight was the truth, cold, sharp, and impossible to escape. A master key quietly passed from Victor Lang to Jax Riley. Earlier clicked softly in the lock. The door to the suite opened without a sound. Ava Monroe was curled up on the white leather sofa, arms wrapped tightly around her knees, as if trying to make herself smaller. The moment she heard footsteps, her head snapped up. Pure terror flooded her eyes. Then she saw him, the man from the blackjack table, the one who had noticed her silent cry for help. The terror cracked. In its place, a fragile spark of hope flickered thin and trembling like a candle fighting against the wind. You really came." Her voice was barely more than a whisper, cracked and shaking. Cole moved slowly. He sat down in the chair across from her, keeping enough distance so she wouldn't feel trapped. His voice came low, calm, but heavy with the weight of someone who had walked through too much darkness already. "I told you I wouldn't walk away. Not after I saw your signal." Ava's breath hitched. She glanced toward the bedroom door where Derek slept, and then back at Cole, tears already gathering in her eyes. Cole leaned forward slightly, his tone steady and clear. "Here's what's going to happen. Derek will return every document he took from you, your ID, your birth certificate, everything. He will sign a statement saying you are leaving of your own free will. And most importantly, he will agree to long-term therapy under Dr. Lena Voss. If he breaks any part of this, every piece of evidence, the messages, the recordings, the proof of what he's done, goes to his ex-wife Rachel, to his daughter Lily, and to the casino management, who still think he's a respectable businessman." Ava listened in silence. Tears slipped down her cheeks, one after another. But these were not the tears of fresh pain. These were tears of something deeper, relief mixed with disbelief. For the first time in 3 long months, someone was looking at her not as a possession, but as a human being who still deserved to live. "I'm scared," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He always knows when something is different. If he finds out I spoke to you, he'll kill me." Cole met her eyes directly. His gaze didn't waver. "Tonight, Derek Kane loses the right to touch you ever again. All you need to do is keep playing the role you've played so well for 3 months. Just a few more hours. When it's over, Mia Torres will take you to a safe place. Dr. Lena Voss and her team will be there. You'll get real help. You'll heal. And one day, you'll learn how to stand on your own again." Ava's shoulders trembled. A quiet sob escaped her before she could stop it. She covered her mouth with both hands, trying desperately to stay silent. Cole stood up slowly. From his pocket, he took out a small burner phone and placed it gently on the table beside her, half hidden behind a vase of white roses. "My number is the only one saved in here. Use it only if you absolutely must. But until morning, stay exactly as you are. That's how we win." He paused at the door, looking back at her one last time. "You're not alone anymore, Ava." Then he slipped out and into the hallway. The moment the door clicked shut behind him, the elevator camera system flickered back to life. A few minutes later, Derek Kane returned to the suite, still unaware that the blade had been placed against his throat. In the shadowed service corridor, Ed Jax Riley was waiting, arms crossed, face grim. Cole stopped beside him and spoke in a low, final voice. "Prepare everything. Tonight, Las Vegas is going to watch one monster lose his prey." The desert wind outside the Royale Casino carried the faint scent of dust and money. But inside, on the 42nd floor, the real storm was about to break. Cole Harlan had chosen not to strike with fists or bullets. He chose something far more dangerous, the casino's own system, and a debt that Victor Lang could never repay. Late into the night, while Derek Kane sat at the marble desk in his suite, confidently arranging wire transfers and a private car for tomorrow morning, the trap closed quietly. First, the cameras on the VIP floor flickered and went dark for exactly 12 minutes. Then the private elevator suddenly stalled between floors, lights dimming with a soft, mechanical groan. A polite but urgent call came through the suite phone management requesting Mr. Kane's immediate presence downstairs to clear up a paperwork discrepancy regarding his VIP status. Derek cursed under his breath, straightened his shirt, and glanced at Ava, who sat motionless on the sofa pretending to read a magazine. "Don't move. I'll be right back." The door clicked shut behind him. Cole stepped into the suite less than 60 seconds later. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Derek had just returned from the staged meeting when he found Cole standing in the middle of the living room like a shadow, wearing a perfectly cut black vest. On the coffee table lay a thick folder. Derek froze. Cole opened the folder, slowly, deliberately. Inside were printed screenshots of Derek's private messages in those hidden online groups bragging about how quickly he had trained Ava. There were timestamps of fake gambling debts he had created in her name. And worst of all, a clear audio recording of Derek's hand around her throat, his low voice whispering threats disguised as love. Derek's face drained of color. Cole spoke, his voice calm and low, each word landing like a stone. "You have two choices tonight, Kane. First choice. You sign these papers right now. You return every document belonging to Ava Monroe. You delete every photo, every video, every trace of her from your devices. You agree to enter long-term therapy with Dr. Lena Voss 3 sessions a week for a minimum of 2 years, and I will receive monthly reports. You never contact her again. You forget she exists." Or, second choice. Victor Lang makes all of this public by morning. Your ex-wife Rachel receives everything. Your daughter Lily learns exactly what kind of man her father really is. The casino revokes your privileges permanently, and the life you've built on lies collapses before sunrise. Derek's hands began to shake. Rage and terror twisted across his face in equal measure. "You can't do this," he hissed, but his voice cracked. "This is blackmail." Cole didn't blink. "No, this is justice wearing a suit." For a long moment, the only sound was the distant hum of the air conditioning and Derek's ragged breathing. Then Derek broke. He sank into the chair, staring at the papers like they were a death sentence. With trembling fingers, he signed where Cole pointed. He handed over Ava's documents. He deleted files while Cole watched. He even recorded a short statement confirming Ava was leaving voluntarily. When it was done, Derek looked up, eyes hollow. Cole stood there like the desert storm itself, quiet, unstoppable, unseen, until it was too late. In another room on the same floor, Mia Torres had quietly moved Ava to a secure suite. Cole stepped in for a brief moment. Ava looked up at him, tears shining in her eyes. Cole spoke gently but with quiet power. "I'm not saving you because you're weak, Ava. I'm saving you because you were strong enough to raise your hand and ask for help in the middle of hell." Ava's lips trembled. She nodded once, unable to speak. Cole turned to leave, but paused at the door. He looked back at Derek one final time. "If you ever break this agreement, if you ever go near her again or any other woman like her, there will be no second conversation. Only consequences." Derek nodded, weakly defeated. Cole walked out into the hallway where Jax Riley waited. As they moved toward the elevator, Cole spoke under his breath. "Keep eyes on him for the next 6 months. Any deviation, we activate Plan B." Deep down, Cole knew men like Derek rarely changed. The desert had taught him that much. But tonight, at least, one young woman had been pulled from the jaws of the sand. And for the first time in 7 years, the blade of guilt inside Cole's chest felt just a little less sharp. 3 months had passed since that night in the Royale Casino. The desert sky over Las Vegas had already forgotten the storm that once raged on the 42nd floor. Ava Monroe was no longer there. She now lived in a quiet, sun-bleached town near the Arizona border, far from the blinding neon and endless noise. At Dr. Lena Voss's private healing center, hidden beyond the edge of the desert, Ava had slowly begun to breathe again. Every morning she attended gentle therapy sessions where she learned how to name the fear that still sometimes woke her at night. The bruises on her neck had faded, but the invisible ones inside her chest took longer to heal. Still she was trying, day by day, breath by breath. Cole Harlan never visited often. He stayed in the shadows the way he always had. He simply paid the bills quietly and received monthly updates through Elena Brooks. He told himself it was better this way. Some distances were necessary for healing. One rare rainy afternoon in Las Vegas, when gray clouds softened the sharp edges of the Strip, a simple handwritten letter arrived at Cole's private office. He opened it alone. The handwriting was neat but still carried a slight tremble, the kind that only someone who had once been afraid to exist would understand. Inside, Ava wrote, "I have a job now. A small coffee shop with wooden tables and windows that look out onto mountains instead of casinos. I make lattes and talk to customers about the weather. Some days are still hard, but most days, I feel alive. I've started teaching basic self-defense classes for young women who need it. I teach them the same silent signal I used that night, because I want them to know someone might be watching. Someone might care enough to see. Thank you for seeing me when I thought no one would." Cole read the letter twice. Then he folded it carefully and placed it in the top drawer of his desk, next to the only other thing he kept there. A small photograph of Sophie Reed smiling on a sunny Brooklyn day many years ago. 2 years later, in a bright conference hall in Phoenix, the air smelled of fresh coffee and hope. Cole Harlan stood at the very back of the room, arms crossed, watching quietly, as always. On stage, a young woman with longer hair and steadier eyes was speaking. It was Ava Monroe. She no longer looked like the frightened girl trapped under casino lights. She stood tall-voiced, clear and warm, leading a workshop on silent distress signals. She told her story without naming names, without drama. "I was once invisible," she said softly to the audience. "Someone had taken my voice, my name, my future. But one night in the middle of hell, a stranger chose to look. He didn't turn away. Because of him, I'm standing here today. And now I choose to look too." Her eyes scanned the room as she spoke. Then they found him. Cole stood motionless at the back. Their gazes met across the crowded hall. For a long moment, time seemed to pause. Ava didn't wave. She didn't cry. She simply gave one small, quiet nod, full of gratitude, strength, and understanding. Cole nodded back. A faint smile touched his lips. In that single, silent exchange, everything was said. He hadn't been able to save Sophie Reed, but he had saved Ava, and now Ava was saving others. Later that evening, Cole drove back toward Las Vegas, under a vast desert sky scattered with stars. The city appeared on the horizon like a glittering mirage, bright, loud, beautiful, and dangerously deceptive. He parked on a quiet overlook above the Strip and stepped out of the car. Below him, thousands of people moved like rivers of light, laughing, gambling, dreaming, hiding. Cole slipped his hands into his pockets and whispered to the warm night air in a city built on illusions. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to look closely. And when that happens, the world becomes just a little less dark. He stood there for a long time, letting the desert wind brush across his face. The guilt he had carried for 7 years hadn't disappeared completely. But tonight it felt lighter, because somewhere out there a young woman who once raised a trembling hand in silence was now raising her voice to help others. And that was enough. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to stay with us to discover more true tales of the Wild West. Stories that honor resilience, tenderness, and the spirit that God placed in those who blaze the trail. Subscribe, share. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us once again to journey across this untamed land. Thank you. Aviso legal/disclaimer. These stories are crafted purely for entertainment and may contain imaginative additions or dramatic interpretations inspired by old frontier eras. We use AI-based resources, voice imagery, and drafting as part of our creative process. But every final detail is carefully reviewed and shaped by human effort to preserve emotional depth and authenticity. We strictly follow YouTube's rules regarding AI-generated content and refrain from deepfakes, altered identities, or misleading representations. All images, sounds, and related materials are lawfully obtained. Please do not reuse, modify, or distribute any portion of this content without written permission. Thank you for valuing creativity, respect, and original work.